Shantae Half-Genie Hero is one of those games that I love and just keeps coming back for more, especially in terms of me doing content. I reviewed the game on the Vita, which I couldn't do here on YouTube because PlayStation TV support was added later. I reviewed it here on the Switch, then I reviewed its first DLC expansion here, and the second DLC expansion. Now, for the 5th time on my website, Shantae Half-Genie Hero is back with its Ultimate Edition that is releasing both digitally and physically, even to the point where it's completely separate from the original game, with its own install and its own icon on the Switch's operating system. And I'm here to give you all the details. Here is my review of Shantae Half-Genie Hero Ultimate Edition for the Nintendo Switch. The story of Ultimate Edition has gotten pretty in-depth since the original release, and that's because all of the DLC expansions have added new story campaigns to go through. The main story of Half-Genie Hero takes place after Pirate's Curse, where Shantae has to go on an adventure to stop Risky Boots after she raids Scuttletown and goes off on her new world conquest plot. And that story is pretty solid, outside of a few things here and there that are said in the game that kinda contradict events said in previous games, but overall pretty solid. Then you got all the DLC stories, only one of which is canon to the events of Half-Genie Hero, which is Friends to the End, where Sky, Bolo, and Roddy Tops go and try to save Shantae during a very spoilery event of Half-Genie Hero that I can't really talk about. Then you've got Pirate Queen's Quest, a spin-off where you play as Risky Boots trying to take over the world. And finally, the Costume DLC, where we get 3 new costumes for Shantae to wear, but with them, new short campaign modes, which are basically silly what-if scenarios of Shantae learning to become a ninja, being a police officer, and trying to go to the beach. Now in terms of gameplay, Half-Genie Hero Ultimate Edition isn't really different from Half-Genie Hero. It's a 2D platformer with combat elements and some light Metroidvania elements. But I'm not going to go too in-depth on that. This is a review of Ultimate Edition, so we need to talk about what Ultimate Edition gets you. And this will be in 2 parts. First of all, you got the base game with its story mode, hardcore mode, and hero mode. You've got the 2 major DLC story expansions, Pirate Queen's Quest and Friends to the End. And you've got the costume DLC expansions, Ninja Mode, Beach Mode, and Officer Mode. Now all of these can be obtained through the eShop for the original game as DLC. However, there are a few things that you get in Ultimate Edition that you cannot get in the original edition. Those are the Hall of Fame Gallery, showcasing a lot of fan art that WayForward has collected from around the web, the Tinkerbat dance transformation, originally exclusive to Kickstarter backers, and new alternate color schemes and costumes for Beach Mode. Now that's not a lot of content, but it is a few pieces of content that you can only get in Ultimate Edition. Now let's talk about the content itself. With all of this DLC thrown in, we now have 6 different story campaigns to play through. And that does add a lot of content, but it also significantly raises the amount of repetition in the game. When I reviewed Pirate Queen's Quest and Friends to the End, I made note that 90 to 95% of those DLC campaigns were just replaying the old story missions and fighting the same story bosses, but with slightly different mechanics. And most of the costume DLC campaigns are the same way. You're playing through what-if scenarios, but going through the same stages as before, fighting the same enemies as before, and fighting the same bosses as before. The only exception to this rule is Officer Mode, which gives you a gun instead of a melee weapon, giving the game a more Mega Man-like feel, as well as giving you the ability to manipulate platforms, not only to set up traps for enemies, but to strategically find routes to get from one side of the stage to the next. But as much fun as Officer Mode is, just remember that if you play all of the campaigns right after one another, it's going to feel really, really repetitive. Now let's talk about content comparisons. A lot of people out there that don't own the game are going to be asking, what's a better deal? Playing the original game and buying the DLC, or buying Ultimate Edition? So we have to look at a few things. The original game is $20. All 3 DLC packs brings that $20 up to $46 if you go the original game route. Ultimate Edition's digital release is $30. And Ultimate Edition's physical release is $40. Considering that Ultimate Edition has more content, you're going to get a better deal if you just buy Ultimate Edition instead of going with the original release. And now let's talk about length. As I said earlier, all of these story campaigns do add a lot of content, but how much content. The original game's story should take you about 6 to 8 hours to complete, and each of the 5 DLC campaigns should take you about 2 hours apiece. So the DLC expansions aren't very long, but overall it raises the game's content to around 18 to 20 hours, which is plenty of content versus either price of $30 for digital or $40 for physical. Now, in conclusion, Half-Genie Heroes Ultimate Edition is definitely the best way to get the game. It's all in one package, it's packed with DLC, and has this really spiffy title screen. Although there are still flaws in the base game's story, and all of the DLC campaigns really raise the repetition. But if you're a fan of platformers or the Shantae series, it's definitely worth a go. Reviews to Go rates Shantae Half-Genie Hero Ultimate Edition for the Nintendo Switch an 8.5 out of 10. If you'd like to comment on this further, feel free to below, or head to the website at www.reviewstogo.com.